Fall sports are coming to an end and winter sports are starting up. We're here to talk about it on this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly.
Welcome to JSW, WCTV's home for Waynesburg sports. Watch our analysts discuss fall, winter, and spring sports and cover topics such as athletes of the week, phenomenal plays, and intense games on a weekly basis. Tune in every Tuesday to hear what's going on with your favorite sports at Waynesburg University here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Where else would you want to be on?
Where else would you rather be?
And welcome into this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael McKenzie, joined by my co-host Benicio DeFalco, talking about four sports at great length today, starting off with football, and we're joined at the end of the desk by our senior football analyst, Brett Gambita. Brett, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
So starting off, big win against Teal, 37-10 on senior day. Just kind of recap that game for us.
Yeah, so the offense really set the tone. They scored first, and this is only the second time that Waynesburg has done that this year, scored first in a game. And in those games, they're 2-0. And Waynesburg was able to keep the foot on the pedal throughout the second half and into the fourth quarter, and scoring on 3 straight drives in the fourth quarter to kind of put the game out of reach. I thought that was a great job by Waynesburg there. And then the defense, they forced 4 turnovers. They caused Teal to punt pretty early on to kind of establish that lead. And Waynesburg's defense didn't allow a touchdown until under a minute and a half left in the game. So I thought it was a stellar performance all around and possibly one of the best games, one of the most complete games that this Waynesburg football team played all season.
Yeah, you talked about the defense a little bit there at the end. They only allowed 10 points as a total on Saturday. How were they able to get it done on Saturday?
Just a lot of the takeaways, man. 4 turnovers. That's something that a lot of units can't do, and Waynesburg's done a great job forcing turnovers. I think they might even be averaging 2-3 a game at this point because, I mean, there's just guys that show up every week and are able to cause plays, splash plays that can give the Waynesburg offense the ball back. So I'd say that's the biggest key is just getting those turnovers and helping put your offense in a position where they can score with a short field.
The senior quarterback, Sam Barber, he had one of his best games of the season. 14 for 17 passing, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't turn the ball over in this game. He's had a number of good performances this year, but this one in particular to me stood out. Where do you rank this among his performances, not even just this season, but in his 2-year tenure as the Yellow Jackets quarterback?
It's definitely up there. It's up there for sure. I'd say this game and the Allegheny game, the Bethany game, that could be the top 3 right there. You're just looking at this year. If you think back to last year, he had a really good game against Geneva, but was forced out, I think, with an injury 3/4 of the way through. But still, really good game from Sam Barber this past Saturday, and it definitely ranks up there among his Waynesburg games. I mean, last year he had Geneva was a good game, Bethany was a good game, Allegheny this year, good game. This Teal game might be at the top of them all.
So Tyler Richmond, 4 receptions, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day. With this performance on Saturday, has he solidified himself as the wide receiver 1 in this Waynesburg offense?
Wide receiver 1, I'm not sure. I think it's just great that Waynesburg has many guys that they can rely on, that Sam Barber can rely on to throw to, because Isaac Trout has been a solid guy his whole career here, and Tyler Richmond here kind of having a breakout season towards the second half of the year is also pretty spectacular to see because he's got 2 years left and he could be that future wide receiver number 1, and also a lot of other guys have stepped up this year and caught some passes. So it's definitely good that there's options that Barber and whoever the future quarterback is can get the ball to.
Now, Teal just had 106 yards of offense in that second half of the game. What do you think was the biggest factor to the defensive success for Waynesburg? It was 14-3, tight game going into half. The defense put together one of their best halves of the season. 4 turnovers, you mentioned it. What do you think was the biggest factor that contributed to their second half success?
Well, they forced some 3-and-outs. They won some of the early downs. I'd say that's definitely a huge factor. In the first half, there were a lot of Teal drives that went longer and longer, and in the second half, it was kind of just Waynesburg limiting those drives and keeping them shorter and getting their offense back out there on the field. So, yeah, the Waynesburg defense played great in the second half, and I'd say it's because mainly they won the early downs, they forced some 3-and-outs, and then, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of turnovers that were forced.
So now Waynesburg has a chance to go over 500 for the first time since 2014. On the road versus Geneva, how do you think they get it done?
I think they got to stop the run. Geneva's one of the best teams in the PAC at running the football. They're in the top 5, so that's definitely going to be a big thing this Waynesburg defense needs to do. Teal kind of ran all over this Waynesburg team, but they didn't really have the points to show for it, so Waynesburg's definitely going to have to limit the amount of rushing yards that Geneva gets in this game, and then some other things as well. Just keep firing downfield. Sam Barber in the last few weeks has been hitting on almost all of his deep shots. So that's going to have to be something that he continues to do, and some of the plays that are called this week have to be Barber taking shots down the field and then just keeping it clean. I mean, Waynesburg hasn't really turned the ball over as of much lately. So if that can stay true as well, this could be a win for Waynesburg in a 500 season.
Going back to that Teal game, looking at the second half, they outscored Teal 23-7 in the second half. Defensively forced 3 turnovers, 2 picks, and a fumble, and then another turnover on downs later in the fourth quarter. 3 touchdowns offensively and a field goal for Waynesburg in the second half. Do you think that was the best, 30 minutes of football they've played all season, at least the second 30 minutes of football they've played this season? Or do you think that was kind of on par with some of the second halves we've seen in the other wins this season for Waynesburg?
I'd say as a complete unit, you could definitely put this up there in the top 3, and maybe it's the best one for best halves of football because the offense was clicking and so was the defense. Like, you could make the argument that the Allegheny game was their best half of football, but the defense allowed Allegheny to get back in that game. The offense had a really good half, but the defense really didn't. So this half of football, this second half against Teal was probably, like you said, one of the best halves that they played of football this season.
So this last game versus Teal was senior night. We saw a numerous number of seniors kind of getting in there towards the end. We saw, Hunter Cameron get in there and score a touchdown, followed by Brian Scott Hills, 2 seniors there. But Jamuel Cypress had 13 total tackles on the day, another senior that was honored. How big of an impact do you think he has on this Waynesburg defense, and where do you think he kind of ranks in the President's Athletic Conference?
He's definitely towards the top, and Jemuel, for all you viewers out there, he was on this show a few episodes ago, and he said, I asked him, what are we going to see to close out the season? He said, we're going to see some Waynesburg football, and he was not lying because this football that they've been playing has been spectacular, and Jemuel is a big part of that because he leads this defense in tackles almost every game. He's flying all over the place. He always seems to just be around the ball, and that's huge for this Waynesburg team. So he's definitely up there in the PAC in terms of linebackers.
Back to that Geneva game real quick to close out the segment. What are some of the things you're looking at this team, maybe from some of the seniors in potentially their final game of collegiate football, maybe from some of the juniors and the sophomores that we expect to step up and maybe take a bigger role in 2025? What are some of the things you're going to be most paying attention for in this game at Geneva to close out the season?
Just play your heart out. I don't want anyone to take any plays off. Just keep applying that pressure. Don't give up. It's game 10 out of 10. There's going to be guys that are banged up. There's going to be guys that are injured. They're tired. Just it's about finishing. It's about coming through. So that's what I want to see against Geneva.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for our football discussion. Thanks for joining us, Brett. But don't go anywhere because when we come back, we're going to be talking about Waynesburg women's volleyball with Ethan Spazarski. Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Ethan Spazarski has joined us on the desk, so that means it's time to talk Waynesburg women's volleyball. Their season has just wrapped up, but starting off, they had a 3-2 victory over Grove City, which won all 5 sets, getting a win versus their former head coach, Emily Grossman. And then this was also the last time the seniors will play in the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse. So how big of an importance was this for the university?
I mean, every single player I got to talk to, all of them, there was a common ground. I mean, it was the last home senior match of the year. Waynesburg, they finished 5-3 at the Rudy Marisa this year at the Fieldhouse. So, they know that they have the ability to win. But the common denominator was they were really eager to get the last home win of the year and against the coach that was sitting across the net on the bench, too. They were really wanting to get after it. There was an eagerness to it, and they displayed it. They came out hot in the first set, winning 25-20. They dropped the next 2 sets. It's being outscored there 50-29, and then they rebound themselves there 25-20 in the fourth set, And then the fifth set comes down to it, and it was back and forth, but Waynesburg prevailed, and that eagerness really showed out there. So, I mean, while Waynesburg at that point was eliminated from playoff contention, only about a couple days before that, they, with this win, knocked out Grove City of the playoffs. Grove City is no longer in the women's volleyball playoffs when they were set to do just that. So, I mean, the win there to beat your former head coach, knock a team out of the playoffs and just play home wrecker in that sense, I mean, it's just, you got to be happy with it. You got to be happy the final home match of your career. The seniors put it on the line. It was a great team effort, and you beat your former coach. You couldn't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, you mentioned all the emotions of that game and how important of a win that is. 5 players in the game had 7 or more kills for Waynesburg. There was a lot of variety. It seemed like everybody, senior or not, came to play. How important was it for really everybody, top to bottom, to come ready to play against Grove City, to have that variety all across the stat sheet?
Well, I mean, I mean, you said it, I mean, very well, and that's what Coach Johnston, new head coach, first-year head coach for Waynesburg, has done all year. She's rotated all the different women in different positions with different groups and sets. I mean, reading off here, Paige Mortimer led the team with 8 kills. Then you had Emma Hyatt, Maddie Dayton with 7. Christina Zadrozny, she had a block as well. Assists, Riley Roofley doing what she's been doing all year, leading the assist category. She had 23 assists herself, with Paige Calzier behind her with 16. I mean, then with the dig category, you know Jordan Stein's going to lead that category. 32 digs, and then Riley Roofley behind her with 13. All those, I mean, all the women I named from you, they range from sophomores all the way to seniors. I mean, everyone in there is just getting involved, and that's just how it's been all year. That's the type of team that Waynesburg has become coming into this year. It's just all the different people, you know, chipping into different moments. It's not just one person standing out doing one specific thing. Everyone's contributing to every category, and that's, I think, all you can ask for out of a team is, I mean, just being able to be scrappy and learn and be confident. Obviously, there were points of the year where it just wasn't looking pretty. It wasn't the best, you know, play they've seen. But I really do believe women's volleyball is continuing to take a right step. Hope Johnson's coming back for another year. She's already worked on recruiting, has people committing, getting new women in here for spring ball when they get started with that. I mean, but that just goes to show just everyone's playing their part here on the team.
So Waynesburg did unfortunately get swept in the season finale versus St. Vincent, 3-0. What were some positives in this one, though, however?
I mean, there weren't too many positives to it. I mean, I ran into Coach Hope Johnson again last night, and she had mentioned, you know, that's a good team they were playing against. It wasn't the prettiest. They weren't, not the way they want to ended. I mean, they got outdigged 91-79. So that right there just shows you, I mean, on the efforts to get the point, St. Vincent was just playing better defensively on the back end of things. But I mean, Krista Wilson, she's a sophomore. She's done a fantastic job this year. She led the way with 8 kills. Zadrozny, a name that I've said so many times over my time of being an analyst up here. I mean, I'm sure she's ingrained in your head. She had 7 kills. Wilson led with 2 blocks, and then Roofley and Zadrozny each had 1. Then Jordan Stein, 20 digs again. And Stein officially set herself. She locked in at number 6, only 8 digs behind the number 5 spot since they started keeping track of stats for women's volleyball in 1995. So to finish there at that program, I mean, just finish off such an incredible career, you got to be really proud of. You didn't get the win, you got swept, but I mean, just being there, spending the time with the people you care about, their chemistry on that team is, I mean, hands down. I mean, you don't see that too often with a lot of people. They have a great relationship there. So being proud of what you're able to put together this year, and the really happy moments, and just sharing that with each other, I think that is the more emotional key takeaway for that match. Yeah, you mentioned all the positives, the good takeaways. Not to bring the mood down a little bit, but just what do you think were some of the things that went wrong in that St. Vincent match that ultimately led to the 3-0 sweep and the loss in their final match? Well, I mean, for starters, I talked about needing to start off hot. I mean, Waynesburg's done that a few matches. They start off hot and then they fizzle out. They never were able to control it. I mean, they lost 25-18 in the first 2 sets to St. Vincent, and then the last one, 25-16. Really never even to keep it close with St. Vincent. I mean, at least show much of a fight with the scrappiness like I talked about with Grove City. So you start off on the wrong foot, and then you just continue to barrel down in that way. I mean, that's just something that's unfortunate. Again, being outdigged 91-79 is big, because that means St. Vincent's defense was on. They were standing on business the whole way through. That's just what you got to do. Be ready defensively to handle anything that comes at you, able to set it up for your offense, and then able to get the kill and get the point. That's what's most important. Waynesburg just did not do that.
So Hope Johnson has wrapped up her first season as head coach here for the Yellow Jackets. So what would you grade her first season overall if you had to put a letter grade to it?
If I had to put, I mean, it's a little hard for me because I'm not a volleyball expertise per se. I don't know every in and out, and I'm definitely not a coach. But I mean, from what I've heard from, I mean, comments from players, from what I've seen put together from the potential right now, she's definitely falling somewhere in that B category. I mean, I'd be happy with what you've seen. You're seeing a different morale change. You're seeing, I mean, I haven't heard this many recruits coming to Waynesburg in a while. She already has a lot of people coming in. There's a lot of potential. She set the foundation for what this program needs to be. Now, obviously, the record finished 7-16 overall and 3-7 in conference. But I think compared to last year, you can be proud of what you've seen. You're consistently seeing, I mean, a lot of effort. 5-3 finishing at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse is definitely one of those bright spots. You have Christina Zadrozny, Paige Mortimer coming back, Riley Roofley as well coming back, an assist machine. I mean, you have other, women in there that are continuing to fill that role, and you have new recruits coming in. So while I'm definitely not the highest learner or master of anything, I definitely think Hope Johnson falls in that B category with what she's been able to do this year. Now, the key thing is, what do you do from here on out? First year, you kind of get a lay of the land, what you have, who you're going to rotate in and out with, where you move on from here. And she definitely has the coaching ability to do just that. We've seen that a lot of scrappiness by Waynesburg this year, showing off a lot of different, spotlights of the different people that could come in, and her coaching style of continuing to rotate people really goes a long way.
And you mentioned the recruits that are coming in, just to kind of put a bow on this segment and pretty much the season. You mentioned the recruits that are coming in, some of the players that are about to be Waynesburg Yellow Jackets, but for those who are returning, the sophomores and juniors that have been in the rotation and made impacts this year, who are some of the returning players for 2025 that you are most looking forward to watching when that time comes around, when Waynesburg volleyball, the fall 2025, gets back into full swing?
Well, 100%. Christina Zadrozny is the number one person on my list. I mean, she finished the year, she played in 87 sets. She averaged 2.5 points per match, finished with 197 kills, led the entire team. Offensively, when she's smacking the ball over the net, you better have some catching. You better have the catcher gear on for baseball, because it's coming at you with all the sauce in the world. And then on top of that, Krista Wilson, sophomore, going to be turning a junior next year. She did really well. 75 sets played this year. She fell just behind with 2.47 points per set. She finished fourth on the team with 143 kills on the year. A lot of potential with her too, working her, rotating her in the front, whether you're trying to draw away, maybe a little fake out, a little psych out, hey, I'm not really doing it, or she actually was. I think those are two of the women that really stepped up. Paige Mortimer has been a consistent, killing beast in the front too. She's always finding her way to the top 3 in kills. And then assist-wise, Riley Roofley, fantastic job all year. There was a one point in the last 3 sets, or in a 3-match category, she had over 60 assists in that time period. So she being able to set the ball up for her teammates and allow them to get there is going to be huge, especially when you're losing Paige Cowsley, who was a really good setter, able to set people up and get the assist for her teammates.
Well, thank you so much for joining us all season long to talk about volleyball, Ethan. That's going to wrap it up for this segment of Jacket Sports Weekly. When we come back, Mo Kiger joins us to talk about Waynesburg University wrestling.
This is so fun.
Cornucopia.
Try instead of train.
And welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly, sitting down for our wrestling segment now on this episode of JSW. And we're sitting down with Mo Kiger to talk about men's and women's wrestling. First time here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Jesse Orban's been the feature wrestler for the men's wrestling team, finished 4th in the Ned McGinley Invitational and 1 in the 184-pound weight class in the Washington and Jefferson Invitational. Mo, how big of a season do you think he's going to have for the men's wrestling team this year?
Yeah, I think that he's going to have a really great season. I wrestled him personally as a high schooler my senior year, and it wouldn't be my senior year, it would have been my junior year. And after what I have experienced and what I have seen from him, he is a well-rounded wrestler. I mean, looking back at last year's stats, he was 15-4 in duels. He was 16-9 in tournaments, and he went on to be 33-15 overall. So going back from last year, I think that he's just going to build onto that and into this year and just have a great season.
Seth Evans is another wrestler expected to have a big role this season. What have we seen from him so far in the small sample size?
I mean, in that first invitational, he placed fifth out of his weight class of 157, and he is one of the bigger wrestlers here at Waynesburg. And then he went on to W&J and ended up placing third. That's a really big jump. So I think that he's also gonna have a really great season, along with it being his senior year. I think that all that build up through high school and his junior year of wrestling here, I think that he's just gonna stand out this year.
Another guy last year, at least as a freshman, that had a big year for the men's wrestling team was Aiden Bischoff. What have we seen so far from Bischoff this year? Kind of expecting him to take a leap from his freshman to his sophomore season for the men's wrestling team. What has he done so far?
So yeah, as we've been talking about this W&J Invitational, a lot of great wrestlers have came out of this, and Aiden Bischoff was one of the ones that has actually placed. He actually placed sixth overall in his weight class of 197. And last year, I didn't really get to look at the stats, but according from what I saw from this year in that invitational, he's also going to have a really great year. And I think that he did very well last year as a freshman. And I think that he's just going to build on. And by his senior year, he's going to be a powerhouse. And I think that he has a chance to win the PAC at his weight class.
So looking forward to Sunday, the Waynesburg duels are being held here at Waynesburg, and they'll be going against Mount Union, Penn State Barron, and a few other colleges there. But what are you expecting to see from this team come Sunday?
I'm expecting to see a lot of grit from a lot of wrestlers. I'm expecting, obviously, we all want to win from all three dual matches. I am expecting to see Seth Evans stand out. I'm expecting to see Jesse Orban stand out and Aiden Bischoff to stand out. Those three I'm not worried about. The other ones I'm not even worried about. I just haven't had a chance to see them wrestle or see their stats. But the team overall has looked very good over these past two invitationals. So I think that they're going to pull off 3 wins at the most. I hope that they go 2-1. Everybody's expecting a 3-0 sweep on these dual matches. But yeah, they're going to have a great Sunday.
And we talked about really the big three so far of this season for Waynesburg and Jesse Orban, Seth Evans, and Aiden Bischoff. But are there any other guys that maybe placed top 10 at either Ned McGinley or Washington and Jefferson's Invitational that we haven't talked about yet that could have, solid seasons for Waynesburg? Guys that maybe we're not expecting them to come in first or top 3 in every invitational or win every single dual match, but guys that can have solid years and help Waynesburg obtain some points in those invitationals and even down the road in the PAC championships?
Yeah, right here I have Rylan Parker. At the W&J Invitational, he went 3-2 on the day. That's not bad. You win 3 matches out of 5, and that is just great. I would love to go out and wrestle and win 3 out of 5 matches. Excuse me. But other than that, yeah, he has a really big chance to help this wrestling team improve over the years. And if he can do that, Waynesburg wrestling will be unstoppable here in the next couple of years. So that's what my take on it.
Going to the women's side of things, they had a match versus East Stroudsburg. It was the Women's Open. Now this was individuals only, and this is where we saw Farron DeWitt get the first win in the women's history. How important of a win was this kind of for the university overall and first-year program with the women's side of things?
That's huge to especially Waynesburg and Farron herself. I mean, she went out there as a freshman, which coming in as a freshman wrestler at the least, that's very hard because wrestling is just a hard sport to take in. And going out to make the program's first win ever and your first win, that is saying something about yourself and what this wrestling program has to come. That
has wrapped up our men's and women's wrestling discussion. Thank you for coming on here, Mo Kiger, and making your Jacket Sports Weekly debut. But don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to be talking about men's and women's basketball with Joey Chirillo.
Unable to watch the live stream? Follow our account on X for live updates on the game. Check us out on Instagram as well for game day posts with all the information you need to know, as well as behind the scenes of each production. Our social media team works the hardest to give the best content to all of our audience. We're even on TikTok. You can stay up to date with WCTV on our Instagram account with clips from each of our shows. And last but not least, subscribe to our WCTV YouTube channel to watch those shows in full length. Check us out from Lewiston, WCTV, and the entire Department of Comm.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Joey Chirillo has joined us on the panel, and it is now time to talk about women's and men's basketball. So starting it off on the men's side of things, they lost the season opener to Stevenson, 73-62. Grant Barnhart and Scott Bilvis were the two leading scorers in this one, but Grant Barnhart being not a familiar face to the Yellow Jackets, how important is it for the transfers to get involved early in the system?
Well, definitely so far it's been one of those crucial things to see, as when we were also with Barnhart, we also saw Rayshad Hooper, the transfer out of Teal. He coming out, he only had 8 minutes on the game, had one technical foul. That's most likely the reasoning why he was benched with that. But with Barnhart going 4 for 6 in the field goal percentage and then 4 for 5 in the three-point lane, and then having 2 rebounds, 14 total points, 23 minutes. Didn't play the whole game. A lot of the guys that we've seen from last season didn't play for a majority of this game. But with those transfers, the biggest thing is going to be how much time are they going to get? How much time are they going to be allotted to be in to make an impact? Are they going to make an impact early in the season to get themselves, auditioned enough to get into that PAC play? Or are they just going to, sit on the side, just be some of those bench players? They did have 31 bench points total, so overall, they definitely got their use out of the entire team. So whether they continue that with the bench or maybe they move on to their starters and keep them fully in, we'll see.
Now, looking at the broader scope of that game, what do you think was the biggest flaw or the biggest contributing factor to the loss for Waynesburg?
I think the biggest loss was just we didn't have enough time within this team. There was a lot of changes in and out. PJ Suggs having 22 total minutes and him having 12 points. That wasn't something we normally saw from him last season. Granted, there were some guys that were seen more often on the team. Jordan McLeod, who has since moved on, has transferred out, transferred in, has then transferred out. But we also had a lot of other guys that have since graduated, Ryan Felberg, stuff like that. So giving Suggs more time definitely was something to see. But then returners from Corey Mitchum and Anton Baker both having 29 total points. They didn't have those points. Mitchum with only 7 points and Baker with only 6. Baker being the reigning defensive player of the year for the PAC, only having 6 points. That's not something we've seen from him in the past. So I think the biggest thing was just those players that continued to do great from last season didn't show that in this game. Now, granted, Stevenson being in Owens Mills, Maryland, they left the day before. They were practicing at UMBC College. They were practicing at a lot of different locations and then happened to just go up to Stevenson. It's one of those questions on, was it the distance? Was it that travel time? Was it, going the day before, sleeping in a hotel, not being in a comfortable position where you kind of threw them off a little bit? They played great in that first half. They were leading going into the halftime area, but then after that, they let up 50 points in that second half for Stevenson to come right back in and win this game.
So looking forward to Pitt Greensburg. They will be playing on the day that this is being put out there. So what are some things that can be done better on the offensive side of things?
The biggest thing is just seeing what we're going to be looking at is like Scott Bilvis. He was in for 27 minutes, had 14 points. He was 4 for 9 at the three-point line. So with that, are we going to continue to do that? The biggest thing that at least I saw was that for the three-point and for the free throw line, they were doing great. For the percentage for the three-point line was 52.6%, and for the free throw line, 62.5%. So when you see that, you definitely got to see that there are some good offensive strategies going on, but it's more of, are we going to just see the time of these players more consistently, or is it just, they treated this Stevenson match like an exposition, like a continued scrimmage, where they just wanted to see what are we going to be looking for? Because maybe they didn't get enough time. They didn't see where this team actually wants to fit in, how they want to mold it, and they're still trying to mold it with these early games before they get into that conference play. It's something that we'll have to see. And I'm taking for Pitt Greensburg to be one of those games on, are we going to see it like similar to Stevenson, or is it going to be similar to what we've seen towards the end of last season?
Now, looking at points in the paint and second chance points, Waynesburg was outscored by Stevenson 34-12 in the paint and 21-6 in second chance points. Stevenson really dominated that area of the game, and that's something different than what we saw a year ago. Last year, it was Waynesburg dominating teams in the paint, controlling the glass, those second chance points in the paint. That first game against Stevenson, really the opposite. Is this first game against Stevenson, at least that area, is that going to be an anomaly this season, or is that going to be something we see a little more consistently, which would be a big change from the way the team operated last year compared to this year?
I think it's going to be an anomaly. You said it right there. I mean, like I said before, Baker being the reigning defensive player of the year, he got that accolade for a reason. He had the most rebounds out of the entire team. For this team, just at Stevenson, only 18 rebounds. Now, to kind of tease what we've seen for the women's side of things, they had 65 total rebounds on their game against Pitt Greensburg. They normally have those numbers switched. Women's normally has the lower side and the men's have the higher side. So is this something that we're going to be seeing normally? No, not at all. I think that once they get into their groove, once they find who their actual starters want to be, then they're going to move into that. Definitely with Jalen Davis only having 12 total minutes. He started the game, but only having 12. I think that was one thing as well, having that big guy, the tall man right there. Normally he's one to get those rebounds along with Baker. They've kind of been that duo in and out. I think that's one thing that when we see going forward, I think that it is going to be an anomaly. We're not going to see it a whole lot for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit there, but now transitioning to the women's side of things, they started the season off versus Pitt Greensburg, winning 96-64. Karen McFadden was the leading scorer in this game, dropping 19 points, 14 of them coming in the first quarter. What role are you expecting her to have this season?
Well, for the Waynesburg University Athlete of the Week in women's basketball, having those 19 points, as you said, also having 9 rebounds, I think that McFadden is going to be able to get a lot more time, especially after this, statement of a game from her. With this, her three-point shooting has been on point. She was 3 for 8, but she's been doing a lot better within the practices. The biggest thing, though, is that she was injured, or somewhat injured, through the last remaining games of their season from last year. So she never really got that time to really start or to really show what she can do on her own. They have a lot of point guards in this system that they can utilize really, really well, and I think that they're starting to feel that. They're starting to understand we have so many key players that we can use at different points throughout the game. So maybe with McFadden getting those 14 points in that first quarter, if she gets them in that first half continuously, maybe they let her sit, take a breather, and they put in someone else like Mia Hankins or maybe some of those freshman point guards that we've been seeing a little bit of, and let them kind of take over in that second half to give them that more of a comfortable lead as they continue on.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Episodes uploaded on our cable channel and our YouTube page every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Make sure to stay tuned on our WCTV YouTube page and social media feeds for more Waynesburg content.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.